So right here on 365 Sports, Grayson Grundhoefer, recruiting coordinator, analyst, and also football analyst, many things, joins us on 365 Sports. Grayson, I saw your, we all have a little mini write-up with our prediction, and you mentioned somehow they're going to find a way to get sacks. Kansas has actually only been sacked 4 times in their first, 6 or 7 games. Baylor has not been getting to the quarterback. What can they do to change that besides somebody play better?
Yeah, a big part of that prediction really comes down to the fact that I think Baylor is going to be able to get out to a little bit of a lead. And I think if they're able to get out to a lead for at least a stretch of this game early, then I think you're going to force Kansas to maybe have to throw the ball a little bit and put them in more obvious passing downs. And while I'm not anticipating Baylor to have some elite performance defensively, I think I had them giving up like 27 points in this game. I do think that we're going to see some strides. And by that, I mean, I think they're going to create a little more havoc on the quarterback. I think they're going to force a couple turnovers in this game. And I think, a lot of that is based on, you had this extra time to prepare. Also because Kansas quarterback Jason Bean, who I believe will start tomorrow, I don't know if that's been confirmed yet or not. He's been a little turnover prone. And so I think that's going to allow Baylor to have some opportunities there defensively.
Grayson, do you think that they will shuffle people in the secondary? Maybe not this week, but next if the defense continues to struggle in the back end.
Yeah, you would have thought that would have been right after the bye week. But then you come off of the bye week and you have your worst performance as a defense that you've had all year. So, conventional wisdom would tell you that they would have addressed this going into this game. But, yeah, you're right. If Jason Bean and this Kansas offense, which is pretty good, is able to tear you apart again, then you're really going to have to consider some things because they go to Tech in the next week and then Oklahoma the next week. And, you got these other offenses at the end of the year with TCU and K-State and Texas. But, a lot of that group I just named are some of the most explosive passing offenses in the Big 12. So if you're unable to stop Kansas from throwing the football, then, yeah, you're going to have to reevaluate some things and try to maybe change up the scheme a little bit. I don't know if they're going to change up the personnel too much. I think they like the group they have out there, and they think the group that they've been playing is the group that can lead them to the most wins. But I think those guys are just going through some growing pains because a lot of them, it's their first year starting. And so I think you're kind of seeing that a little bit from the secondary and also from many other positions. I don't want to put this all in the secondary. Those veterans up front haven't really been getting the job done in their one-on-one matchups. And then at linebacker, Dylan Doyle and Matt Jones, they've been inconsistent in my eyes. They've had good performances, but they've also had some not-so-good ones as well, especially the West Virginia game. So a lot of blame to be thrown around, but either way, this group just needs to start figuring it out and start playing more together as a unit.
Blake Shapen's back from the head injury, concussion, whatever you want to call it, against West Virginia a little over a week ago. Prior to that, obviously was hitting a pretty nice groove with the offense, even though they still can't run the ball all that effectively. What are you expecting with him back in the saddle this weekend?
Yeah, more of the same, right? I'm expecting him to continue throwing the football at a very high level. Kansas has one of the worst pass defenses in the Big 12, right there with West Virginia. So there's going to be opportunities in this game to take shots deep downfield and also across the middle of the field, which is especially where Oklahoma really picked apart this Kansas defense, was right over the middle of the field. But, guys, the biggest thing for me, I like seeing Shapen develop and I like seeing the passing game grow. But Baylor needs to get back to their bread and butter, and that's running the football. And they need to do that at an elite level tomorrow. We just saw Oklahoma run for nearly 300 yards on Kansas last weekend. So I don't see any reason why Baylor shouldn't be, in the 200, 250 range, averaging 5 yards a carry. They need to get back to that. And I think that mindset really needs to come through tomorrow in a game where you're playing at home in front of your fans. There should be an extra motivation there, and they really need to start running the football at a higher level.
Let's say, because Squirrel's out. We don't know about Tay McWilliams. I'm not sure where Jordan Jenkins is. I think he's been kind of in a protocol too. So let's say Reese gets 98. and busts one long one, and Shapen gets 37. Where does the rest of the yardage come from?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. I think they're really going to rely on Richard in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think it's going to be more than 98. You know what I mean? I don't think you're going to see Shapen running around too much. I would say that this is a game where maybe Richard looks more like Texas State Richard, where he's running for 150 some yards. I really think they're going to rely on him and pound the rock with him. But you are right. It is a concern, and it might be something where, that forces them to throw the ball more. But hopefully not, because this mindset that they had a year ago, they need to get that back if they're really going to make some noise throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, but how do you just do that, Grace? I think that's the $1 million question is, how do you just get it back? It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. I think that, the Khalil Keith coming back is something to keep an eye on, because as much as people, want to talk about Gavin Byers, when they get Khalil Keith back, I mean, that's a guy that many people think of as an NFL draft pick. It's just a different level, what he can bring to this offense, especially in the run game. And for that reason, there's an upside there when he does come back, which, we might get to see him this week. We'll see. But I think he would be a huge, pick-me-up for this offense. I also will say, during this run that they've had where, the running game hasn't been as sharp, West Virginia, pretty good against the run. Oklahoma State, okay against the run. BYU was good at the run at the time they played them. And Iowa State, great against the run. Now you look at the rest of their schedule, they're playing teams like Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, TCU, teams that just can't stop the run. So I think that could change some things as well. I think Baylor could get things going against maybe some of these defenses that aren't quite as elite.
Grayson, Seth Jones announced that he is entering the transfer portal, a teammate of Kyron Drones from Shadow Creek High School down in Houston. We'd seen little flashes of him earlier in the year, and even, some perhaps overreaction, but just some reaction was like, oh, hey, he's showing, flashes, and maybe he's one of those guys that will step up at wide out. But instead, he's now in the portal. Your thoughts on what that means for him, for Baylor, et cetera?
Yeah, guys. I mean, it means that there's only two upperclassmen left on the roster, Gavin Holmes and Jalen Ellis. So you're losing out on that. And, Seth was just the guy who I don't think he ever – I mean, really his peak was spring ball and then fall camp, where it looked like he might be the starting receiver. But obviously, as the season progressed, things changed. Gavin Holmes started to take over reps on the outside along with some of the other receivers like Josh Cameron. And for that reason, he kind of was an odd man out. And so it's not a huge loss for Baylor. Baylor's relying on their younger guys to really become, a big part of this offense, I think. And they're also hopeful with some of the other guys in the room. But I think with Seth, I think he just kind of saw the writing on the wall and decided that, he needed to go make a change and go somewhere else where maybe he could have an opportunity at more consistent reps with the first team.
Grayson, you mentioned about over the middle against Kansas. Isn't that what they actually had success doing with West Virginia, against West Virginia, but just not enough?
Exactly. And that's what I was kind of alluding to about, this Kansas secondary is the second worst in the Big 12 besides West Virginia. So you're going to get some great mismatches across the middle. I think you're going to see probably a lot of Ben Sims and Drake Dabney across the middle, probably some Monterey Baldwin as well. They're just very susceptible to big plays across the middle. And then once you start softening up the middle, then you can take shots on the outside, which OU was able to do with Theo Weiss. I think Baylor can do that with Hal Presley or Gavin Holmes as well. So lots of opportunities, I think, for Blake Shapen to create some explosive plays. And I'm excited for that. I just also want to see a physical brand of football that Baylor established a year ago.
Grayson, this is like a more down the line off-season topic, but it's in my head now because of something that you said. But we're sitting here talking about the running backs and can name one guy that we feel great about them actually being able to get yards out of tomorrow. Part of that's because they decided to rely on an injury-prone player in Squirrel Williams, and we knew that was something that kind of could be hit or miss. I don't know where Quaylon Jones falls into the mix, but like Jordan Jenkins has been a non-factor. There's just not a lot there at running back. You just mentioned wide receiver. It's all young guys. Like now they have two veterans, and Gavin Holmes doesn't have any more eligibility left. Jalen Ellis, I mean, at this point, just being honest, it wouldn't surprise to see him in the transfer portal soon because he's not really carved out a mark in a couple of years. So how worried are you about the skill talent and just kind of the uneven nature of it? Or do you think that's something that you just, you get another class in and you're going to be youthful next year once again?
Yeah, I think it's really tough at running back, right? Because like you said, you're relying on Squirrel Williams, but really they were relying on Mick Williams.
Sure.
And he's been hurt. And so, you can't really, you can't blame them for that. Like they felt like their running back room was going to be fine with those two, the emergence of Quaylen, and then they were really high on Richard Reese as well. And hopefully, between him or Jordan Jenkins, one could emerge. And obviously that's been Richard Reese. So, I think if Tay can get back healthy, I still think they feel good about their running back room. But I would also say, they went out and they added Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass in this class, in the 2023 class. So bringing in two running backs for that class clearly tells you that they want to add more depth to the position. So that makes sense at running back. Receiver guys, this was one of those positions where I was quite frankly shocked that they didn't, really go in with more emphasis in the transfer portal. There have been some high impact guys out of the transfer portal that, I felt like maybe they could have landed. The one that really comes to mind is Jacob Towing, who's really playing well at Arizona. He was one that I felt like Baylor would have had a shot with, but they never really pursued because they trusted their young guys in the room and felt like they could get them through the season. And, I think for the most part they have. There just have been stretches where things just have been off, whether it's the running game or whether it's, the quarterback position or the pass protection. It hasn't all been the receivers. And so I think it's kind of tough to judge. I think over the second half of the season, as these receivers start to grow a little bit more, as they get healthier up front on the offensive line and their quarterback gets more experience, I think we'll really find out what that group has. And I truly do think at this time next year, we're going to be talking about the skill position groups in a much different light.
Thank you, Grayson, very much for the thoughts on your prediction, also the game, and also looking forward to what Baylor does to try to fill some gaping holes in a couple of positions. John Bolster